Well, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Labour Party Hustings. It's been arranged primarily for councillors here, but also there are party members in the region who have come to attend as well. Of course, we have the four candidates here, Yvette, Andy, Liz. We need to probably get a bit of order. I'm sorry, Jeremy. Jeremy, sorry. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
We've drawn lots prior to our candidates coming out here, and that's determined a speaker order, and people are sat in the order that they will speak in. What we're going to do, first of all, is to take the questions that have been pre-submitted. So just for the candidates, over the course of the conference, we've been encouraging people to go to the Labour Party stand, submit questions, and to be fair, we've had a great number of questions, really some fantastic questions. But there were a number of questions that kind of fitted into the same category, around housing, around devolution, around funding, etc. And what we've done there is just to take out the fullest question in that mix. So I'm going to take the questions now that have been submitted, and the first question is from Councillor Alice Perry from Islington. Alice, make yourself known, and we'll get a microphone to you.
Hello, good morning. Councillor Alice Perry from Islington and also on Labour's NEC. As Labour MPs in Parliament, what personal responsibility do you take for Labour's election defeat, and what lessons have you learned from it?
Okay, Yvette.
Thanks, Alice. I think that all of us share responsibility for us having lost when we so badly wanted to win. We've lost 200 councillors across the country, and yet all of you worked so hard pounding the streets. We had so many fantastic candidates as well. I think we were too narrow as a party. We need to reach out, and that doesn't mean moving our narrow party a bit to the left or moving our narrow party a bit to the right, because that won't work. We've got to reach out. We've got to win back votes from the Tories, from UKIP, from the SNP. We can't carry on with this myth that somehow the UKIP only took votes from the Tories. We know they didn't. They also took votes from Labour. But we also know that we didn't reach out enough to meet people's ambitions for the future, for their kids. And in the end, the Tories, I think, were able to run a campaign that was based on fear and on division and blame, but we didn't have enough optimism to be able to beat them in that game. That's what we need for the future, an ambitious vision for the future, but also to be able to reach out in all directions, not to rerun the elections of the past, but have that vision for 2020 and beyond.
Alice, of course, we all accept our responsibility. It was a devastating defeat, and we were all there. And, I wasn't one of those wise after the event. I think Ed did a great job bringing us from government through opposition and held us together. Sadly, we didn't have enough at the final analysis. What lessons do I learn? The big lesson is, for me, knocking on those doors, is that this party of ours has lost its emotional connection with millions of people in this country. Not just here, not just in the Midlands and the South, but obviously in Scotland as well. We cannot keep knocking on those doors and hear people say, there's no point, you're all the same. Or, my dad did, my granddad did, but I'm not there for Labour anymore. The big lesson is we have got to act on that and put this party of ours back in touch with ordinary people. We cannot go into this referendum on Europe in the state that we're currently in. We need big changes to the Labour Party to put us back in touch with the public, and that is what I offer as leader of the Labour Party.
Thank you.
Yesterday I was with some of our councillors in Medway, those towns that we held from 97 to 2010, but now we've been wiped out. And they said to me, look, people who are on the bedroom tax or the minimum wage, or have been hit by the bedroom tax on the minimum wage, or on 0 hours contracts, we had something to say to them. But they told me, for too many people in those seats, we didn't have anything to say. If they ran their own small business, if they owned their own home, and if they weren't on the minimum wage. So we've got to have an offer that is broad. You know, we care passionately about the most vulnerable, but we have to offer something for the whole country because we want to govern for the whole country. And we've always won, whether it's in 1945, 1964 or 1997, when we've been about the future and had policies for the world as it is and it will be, not as we wish it would be. And ultimately, if people don't trust us with their money or on the economy, we won't get a hearing for anything else. That's what they told me in Medway yesterday, and that's what we've got to do to change and win in 2020.
Like everyone here, I was devastated by the election result, although it was almost a parallel universe with a huge swing to Labour in my part of London and a very engaged and very large Labour Party in that area as well. I think we lost for a number of reasons. One is we didn't excite people, we didn't inspire people enough, and if they look down the line, an economic strategy we were about to follow in government, which would have meant a lot more devastating cuts, particularly to local government services over the next 5 years. I think we've got to be quite clear that we've got to break the austerity mould and got to break the idea that you cut your way to prosperity. You simply don't. You have to expand the economy, and particularly by investing in new services and new industries. I spent quite a bit of time in other constituencies, but I'll give you one quick point. I was in Thanet with Will Scobie, our candidate there, and we were canvassing on a very poor, quite badly run estate. Most of the people there either didn't want to know, depressed, some were voting UKIP. A community Labour Party, community social movement, strong social movement will bring all those people back to us. That's, I think, the task for us in opposition now, is to build the Labour Party into the social movement it was founded to be.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is from Elisa Fleming from Croydon.
Hello, I'm Councillor Lisa Fleming, Croydon Council, London's Regeneration Borough. So after the Scottish referendum, what's England's answer to devolution?
Andy?
Thank you. My answer to devolution in England is to push power down as far as we can, down to the very local level, so that councils can then push power down into your communities. That means a new role for local government and for councils. I talk about the Westminster-centric world that we have. For decades, it has distrusted local government, and in my Labour Party, that will not continue. We can't keep hollowing out local democracy and stripping councils of their power and their responsibility. So I am saying I will ask councils to commission with a single budget at local level. I will give more freedoms to our councils to borrow, to build houses, for instance. And I want councils to have more powers to make changes in their local communities, on the high street, but also in terms of dealing with problem properties. I want a new vision for councils in England so that they can respond properly to the concerns that local people raise. We have an unbalanced politics in this country. We have had it for decades. A Westminster-centric model, and we see the arrogance of it now, where they're trying to do devolution with a gun to people's head, saying, accept this model or nothing else. That is not good enough. We get power right down to the local level, and that is what I'm offering, a new vision for local government in England.
Okay. Liz?
I think we've had some announcements today about English votes for English laws. I actually think it's time that Labour stop swimming against the tide here and back the idea that English voters should have the right to determine issues that solely affect England. We're seeing much more devolution over this Parliament to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and we need to have a strong voice for England too. But the Tories are completely deluded if they think that kind of internal fix within Parliament or some sort of English Parliament is going to tackle the fact that people are so fed up with politics and the way that they're governed. We need a radical devolution of powers out of Whitehall, down to our cities, towns and counties, and down to our communities too, because you know best what's going to work to get the skills people need for the jobs of the future and to have decent public services. We're too centralised as a country, and to be honest, we're too centralised and controlling as a party. That's got to change if we're going to renew our politics and build a Britain that's fit for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy?
We have a very strange scrambled egg of a constitutional arrangement in the UK with vastly differing powers between Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and English regions, London and other places. I think we need now, in opposition, to set up a constitutional convention in which we bring in a very large number of people so we work out how we develop devolution in England, how we develop regional government in England, how we give powers and sufficient funding to local authorities to be the innovative democratic hub that they were designed to be and always could be. So we need to also take back some of the powers that have been removed to central government by local government. For example, the permitted development rights. For example, the right to borrow in order to build housing. For example, the right to, and ability to fund and innovate in social services and so many other areas. Be proud of democracy, be proud of devolution and be proud of what local government can achieve if the shackles were removed from it and the underfunding was taken away.
Thank you. Yvette?
I think we need a radical devolution plan. We had a plan in the general election which covered transport and adult skills and regeneration, the work programme. We've got to go much further than that. What about local energy plans? What about 14 to 19-year-old skills? What about challenging this idea that somehow the government is centralising education just at the time that they're localising everything else? Why is Manchester not able to do that? I think that we shouldn't have been against the principle of Greater Manchester doing health, because one of the important ways that we can link health and social care, so many different areas that we can do far more in terms of devolution, and we, the Labour Party, should be leading that debate, just as we did in the late 90s when we first took power and then somehow we lost momentum. We should seize that momentum again. Let's go further, but let's make sure this is about towns, not just cities. Let's also make sure that this is not about a central model which says you've got to have a mayor and somehow you're allowed to be devolved the powers, but you can't have a devolved decision about whether or not you have a mayor. That's not on. This should be proper devolution, and this should be power to the many, not the few. It's always been a Labour principle.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is from Councillor Stephen Ackers-Belcher from Hartlepool Borough Council.
Thank you. What commitment are you able to give to address the current government grant regime that has hardest hit the most deprived communities, and what would you do to change it to safeguard local government services?
Thank you, Liz.
I think it's been morally reprehensible and economically illiterate to make the biggest cuts in the areas with the greatest needs. You know, if you're not providing the funding to help children who are stuck in care, that's going to build up bigger problems for the longer term. If you're going to slash social care funding and more elderly people end up in hospital, that costs more to the taxpayer. And if you don't help build the homes we need in future, you're going to see ever-increasing housing benefit. And to be honest, I don't think we did enough to attack and challenge the Tories on this, on their politically motivated cuts that hit the areas with the greatest needs most. I want to see a fair funding formula based on needs. You know, the Tories say you're now responsible for all these decisions, but don't give you the funding to actually back it. And I want to see much greater fiscal devolution. It's much more than just giving skills, the work programme and all of that. We need a new model of fiscal devolution. Why not far more power over business rates? You know, so that if councils are growing their economy, they can keep more of the money and invest it in the future. That's the model we need in future, not what the Tories have done.
Thank you, Jeremy.
What the Tories have done is beyond reprehensible. It's just disgusting, the way in which essentially the poorest and most deprived parts of the UK have been hit the hardest. We already have the most centralised form of local government anywhere in Europe. We already have the greatest income gap of any country in Europe between the poorest and the wealthiest regions of Britain, and local government is trying to cope with those problems. So we need a much fairer funding formula for local government that does reflect the poverty, the needs and desperation of many of those those communities. But we also need to recognise that if you just devolve business rate powers, for example, that doesn't necessarily end the level of inequality, because some areas will do very well out of business rates. London, for example, other parts will do less well out of it. So there has to be a role for central government in sharing it out and being fairer. We also need to allow local government to innovate much more, as German local government can, involve themselves in local industries, involve themselves in local businesses, involve themselves in local economic regeneration, make local government the heart of development of our communities rather than just an agent of central government. I believe very strongly in the democracy of local government and what it can achieve in our society.
Thank you. Yvette?
Yeah, it is outrageous, isn't it, what the Tories have done? The idea that you could have funding cuts per head of about £20 per head in the wealthiest parts of the country and over £300 per head in the poorest parts of the country. That is what Tories do. But it's not what Labour does, and we should have a much fairer funding plan. You know, it's always hard to make sure that you can get a plan that works with funding formulas, but it can be done. We shouldn't shy away from it. We should make sure that it's fair. Actually, we would have to do it for policing as well as for local council funding. And also to recognise, though, this is not just about what the formula is around the country. It's also about really scrutinising and holding to account George Osborne and the government for the decisions that they are likely to announce in the budget next week, which I know many people are deeply concerned about, especially the impact that it's likely to have on social care. But the big challenge to them is the scale of the cuts they're planning and the roller coaster pattern that they've set out. The OECD have said that's also going to hit growth. So it's going to be counterproductive in the long term. So we've got to be ready to challenge them next week, because too often they just nationalise decisions, but they localise blame, and we mustn't let them get away with it.
Thank you. Andy?
I know there are people in this room who have had to take decisions in recent months that quite honestly will have made you wince and made you feel, how on earth are you going to make this work, where some of the most vulnerable people in our communities are the biggest losers. And I, if I'm honest, don't think we have done enough to support you at a national level in putting the blame where it lies, at the door of this government. I have done what I can to argue that cuts to social care, not just wrong in principle, actually pile pressure on the NHS, and I will continue to do that. I will always call for a funding formula, not just in local government, but health too, based on need and deprivation, so that funding is available where it is most needed. But the last thing I would say is this. I put out a plan today, a new future for local government in England. It's not just about the handouts. It's about more freedom for you to do things at local level to change your community, building a new school without going to Westminster for permission, building new houses the same. That has got to be the future for local government in England that we want, where we trust our councils and our councillors to get on and make the changes in their communities without always having to go for permission to Westminster.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Sharon Taylor from Stevenage. Get the microphone just here.
Thank you. Sharon Taylor, recently parliamentary candidate for Stevenage, but very proud to still be the leader of the only Labour council in Hertfordshire. My question reflects some of the things I heard on the doorstep. How do we develop a credible Labour vision for the economy?
Thank you. Jeremy?
I think there's two essential parts to that. One is that we challenge the whole narrative of austerity, of a crisis created by banking and paid for by the poorest people in the country and the poorest people all across Europe. Secondly, we try to develop and grow our economy rather than shrink it. And that means investment. It means investment in productive industries. It means freeing up the innovative skills of a lot of young people who are often denied that. And it means also developing the green economy and the high-tech economy that we can develop in this country. Also investing in infrastructure, because infrastructure is obviously key to what goes on into industrial development in the future. And therefore, we reverse the cuts in rail investment that have just been announced this week by the government, and we also actively promote the building of social housing, because that is the key out of the housing crisis, and in return creates jobs, and in return has an industrial spin-off. So in short, we reject the austerity agenda, we invest in the economy, we invest in growth, we invest in people.
Thank you. Yvette?
We've got to have a plan for growth, to be part of the new economy of the future. And that means working with business as well, which obviously many of you do every day in your communities. We too often, I think, looked as though we didn't want to work with business and we were pushing them away, and we have to create the high-tech jobs of the future. We've got to have much more investment in science and technology and R&D. I've said we should have a target for 3% of our national income to be going into science. That in itself is likely to create over 2 million more high-tech manufacturing jobs, so that we have, again, as we did in the 60s, not just a white heat of technology, but a kind of white light of technology for those new jobs, but also the vocational training and opportunities, so everybody can be part of that. We've got to make sure the debt and the deficit come down. We can't just wish them away. We've got to be responsible. You can do that in a balanced way, but also in a very rigorous and responsible way. But we should also challenge the myths that somehow there were Labour public spending problems in the past that made us too weak to cope with the recession and the financial crisis, or even that they caused the financial crisis. They were Tory myths. We should take them on, but also have our own Labour ambitious, credible vision for the future.
Thank you. Andrew?
You may as well go back to Alice's question. I think our biggest failure in the last 5 years was to both defend and explain Labour's economic record when we were in government. We let the Labour's millstone be hung around our necks. We ran a strong economy for 10 years, between 1997 and 2007. We did fix the roof when the sun was shining, the roofs of those schools and those hospitals where water was coming through. But I don't think we win back trust if we just say we got everything right and we did nothing wrong. Honestly, don't think that's what the public will buy. We have to admit where we got things wrong. We did let the deficit get too high, and then we weren't in a strong enough position when the crash came. And you've got to face up to that if you want to win back people's trust. How then we build a plan that can bring people back together? It's got to be a Labour plan. Let's not buy the Osborne plan of reducing the deficit from spending cuts, because it won't feel like progress to the public to have brought the deficit down if we've destroyed the fabric of our communities in the process. Let's have a Labour plan based on growth, based on quality jobs, based on productivity, based on the new economy. Let's have a Labour plan to bring down the deficit, and that will be the way to win back the trust of the people of this country.
Thank you. Liz?
I don't agree with Jeremy that we should sort of ape the Syriza or Podemos anti-austerity movement. I think we'll be out of power for more than a decade if we do that. We do need a credible plan for jobs and growth, and that is a huge part where you come in, because I believe our cities, towns and counties are going to drive that national renewal. But we need more than that, Yvette was rightly saying we need a credible plan for jobs and growth. But let's be honest, unless we are trusted on the public finances and getting the deficit and the debt down, people will not give us a hearing for the broader things we all want to do. You know, we want to back great businesses and champion more jobs, because that's how we get the investment in the public services we all want to see. But we're going to have to face head on the issues of welfare reform. You know, I don't want to see £30 billion of taxpayers' money being spent on tax credits, subsidising low-pay employers. We've got to have a living wage society. And I don't want to see £27 billion going on housing benefit. I want that money going into investment in home and building new homes. We are going to have to rethink what we do. If we simply make the same case as we've been making over the last 5 years, we will lose again. We've got to be bold and change.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Councillor Simon Heddick from County Durham. This microphone just on the front row here, please.
Hello, Simon Hennig, also Chair of the LGA Labour Group and Chair of the ALC. Labour councillors are the backbone of the party on the ground, at the heart of communities across the country. What specific proposals do you have to improve the representation of councillors within the Labour Party?
Okay, thank you. Yvette?
Yeah, councillors are not just the backbone of the party, but also doing all of the work in constituencies every day of the week that connects us nationally between general elections, and are taking some of the tougher decisions as well. And frankly, you're also contributing a huge amount to the finances of the Labour Party as well. So I think there are three things that I would do. I think, first of all, you need a much stronger voice and more representation on the NEC. Secondly, I think that we need a proper standing committee of the shadow cabinet that should include the representatives that you want from local government across the country, towns and cities, rural areas, north, south, and shadow cabinet members to meet regularly, to actually develop the policy of the party. And the third is, I think we should also be recognising your role, challenging this pickles idea that somehow you are just doing a part-time hobby by being councillors when you are often doing full-time jobs with huge responsibility, taking huge decisions, and we should immediately argue to lift the ban on councillors' pensions as well.
Simon, I think one of the big failings of our time in government was that we just didn't listen to our councillors. We stopped listening to our councillors. Almost we treated Labour local government like the trade unions as embarrassing kind of relatives from the past that we didn't want to have much to do with, and that can't ever be repeated. The product of that was a failure, for instance, to build more council housing. If we'd been listening to you when we were in government, we would have done that and we wouldn't have a housing crisis of the scale that we've now got. We need more respect for councillors and more recognition within our party structures. We need more training and support for councillors. We elect people and then just expect them to be able to get on with the job and do all of the things we would want them to do. They need more support from the party centrally. There needs to be more accountability and transparency about how the levy that is collected off councillors is spent if we're to build that trust. And I agree with Yvette, we need a position guaranteed on the NEC, permanent attendance at shadow cabinet, leads working with the front bench policy teams to make sure we don't get into a position where we have a disconnect between the Labour front bench and our local government colleagues.
Thank you. Liz?
It's great, Jim's on the NEC, but it doesn't make sense to me that we have just, one representative from our great councils there. Two, sorry. But, it doesn't make sense to me that we have so few people on the NEC or not regularly coming to shadow cabinet. But far more importantly than that, how can our education team, our health and social care team, our housing ministers, our early years development, jobs growth, the biz team, the treasury team, none of us can develop anything like the policy agenda we need without your input. I know during the last 5 years, whenever there was a tough question about how could you do things differently when there's less money around, I pointed at what you were doing. I also want to see far more control over how local campaigns are being run, pushed out from the centre and downwards. Lots of us, struggled with some of the central messages that weren't going to work locally. And I just want to say one final thing. It's not just where Labour is in government locally. All of our Labour leaders and councillors where we're in opposition, like in the Medway, we've got to start working with you straight away if we're going to have a hope in hell of winning again in 2020.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Well, councillors are obviously absolutely part of the community and the public face of the Labour Party in most parts of the country, just as much as MPs are. Harriet made that point in her opening remark, and therefore, of course, there should be enhanced direct representation on the national executive, but there also has to be a role for local government now in working out what we want in the long-term future. Is local government to be continuously denied sufficient funding in order to develop social housing, or forced to end up getting into bed with a lot of property developers, which often does not deliver very much social housing at all at the end of it? We also need them to be part of a constitutional convention that will bring about a greater, permanent, enhanced powers and role for local government within our society. So it's a question of the party also recognising the role that local government plays. Councils play a part in everybody's life every day of their life, every day of the year. We need to ensure that the party also understands that and focuses on the way in which local government can deliver a lot of decency within our society, which is currently denied by underfunding.
Okay, thank you. We have time now for a final question before we're going to ask the candidates to take to the lectern and effectively make their pitch to the audience. So I'm going to take Councillor Sam Dixon from Cheshire West and Chester Council.
Thank you very much. Sam Dixon from Cheshire West, now a Labour council, I'm pleased to say. The integration of health and social care is one of the major future challenges for our country. What do you believe is the role for local government, and what are the implications for the devolution agenda?
Thank you, Sam. Andy?
Sam, I think integration of the NHS and social care has to be led at the very local level. That is why, in the last Parliament, I developed a proposal for the full integration of the budget, a single budget at local level, where local government was in the lead on commissioning with a single budget for children and adults. I didn't oppose the Osborne plan, actually, but it left many questions unanswered as far as I was concerned. And it wasn't, you can't lead, in my view, integration from a regional or sub-regional level. For me, that is the only way to go, getting those powers right down so that we can remodel services around the individual. We cannot carry on with a situation where we have social care in this country, malnourished, minimum wage, dishing out care in these 15-minute visits. We have to change that, and the only way to change it is a national health and care service, full integration of those services, starting in the home, one point of contact for the public, local government in the lead on commissioning. That is the radical vision I put forward in the last Parliament. It's the radical vision I stand by now, and I'll be unveiling detailed plans later in this campaign for it.
Thank you. Liz?
We can't keep looking at the NHS and social care separately. It won't work. It's not right now, and it won't be right for the future when we are an ageing population, and we need to do far more to keep people fit and healthy and living independently at home. So we need a fully joined up service. But my view is different from Andy's in that I think you should decide how best to make that work locally. There will be different solutions in different parts of the country. I don't think that's for us to determine. It should be down to you. And I just want to say that actually one of the best days of my life since being the Shadow Care Minister actually was with Jeremy when we were at Islington Council, where our great council there had decided to pay its care workers the living wage, including for travel times, and also have a single point of contact so that people didn't have to battle all the different parts of the system. You know best what's worked in Islington. It will be different in different parts of the country. We set the direction, and you did say how it happens, and I know you'll make a difference if you're given that freedom to do it yourselves.
Thank you. Jeremy?
I'm allowed to congratulate Islington Council. Fantastic work. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Yes, okay. Yes, there is an adult social care crisis in Britain. Oh, and Southwark. How many more? Yes, and all the others. Okay. There is an adult social care crisis at the moment in Britain. And there is also a problem now of increasing crisis in the acute services in the hospitals, as dependent elderly are often unable to find anywhere to go to because local governments simply cannot cope with the move on from hospital care to community care. And so if we are to devolve services to a combination of localised NHS and localised local services, particularly in adult social care, the funding must follow. There must be sufficient follow through on the money in order to achieve that. Give you an example. The Independent Living Fund has been devolved to local government with no ring fencing of it. I suspect there's going to be enormous problems in the future, and the whole direction of travel that we took as a party of supporting the principles of independent living will probably be damaged, if not destroyed, by the end of this period of Tory government. So let's make sure the money follows the services, and that should be the watchword and the guarantee of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yvette?
We do need to integrate health and social care. We all know that if social care gets hit, in the end it's the NHS that picks up the bill, and we get bad care and support for people, as well as having a crisis in A&E. I think when we looked at this last time when we were in government, I think unfortunately progress was held up by having grand plans that ended up being so expensive that nobody could fund them, and so we didn't make the progress that we needed at all. And at a time when the debt and the deficit need to come down, and we've all said that they need to, that means we have to make sure that we've got a plan that we can fund as well. And that's why I think we can make progress by taking steps forward at local level towards a vision. Be clear of the kind of vision we want to move towards, but also make sure that within different areas we can make that progress by starting to integrate that health and social care now at local level with local government playing a crucial role in how we make that happen. But in the end, it's got to be about the individual patients, and it's got to be about the individuals who need that care. And if we design it around a kind of grand plan rather than around those individuals, we won't get them the care that they need.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we're now going to take the statements from the candidates. Each candidate has been given 2 minutes to make their pitch, and we're going to take them in the order they're seated on the top table. So, Yvette, you're first.
Thank you. On polling day in Normanton, my constituency, when we were knocking up, a woman came up to me asking for help with her bedroom tax arrears. And she was in tears as she told me about it. And I said to her, look, go and vote. You must vote today. And she did. She voted Labour. She voted to get rid of the bedroom tax. But we lost. The bedroom tax is still in place. And I feel like we let her down. We cannot do that again. Because we won in Normanton, but we lost in Nuneaton. We lost many of your councillors who we really wanted to win. And we know that opposition sucks. Because we want to change our communities, we want to change the country, we want to change the world. And we can only do that if we win. And that's why we need a leader who can reach out all across the country. I was born in Scotland, brought up in England. My family are from the northern coalfields. I went to a comprehensive school in Hampshire. My first job was as rural as it gets. I was working on a farm, but my kids now go to school in the biggest and most diverse city in Europe. And I love the diversity of our country. But I know we need a leader who can be just as at home in the business boardroom, in the working men's clubs, and on the school gate if we're to win so many voters back. We also need a leader who is strong enough to take the Tories on. So make sure when you vote for a leader you are confident can be a Labour Prime Minister from the start. Someone who will take David Cameron on, which frankly I would relish. Someone strong enough to change our party so that we can change the country. So we can work with business and with you to hold the high-tech jobs of the future, give you more power and say in the country, delivering power to the many, not to the few. And I'm only standing here because I've had so many opportunities because of Labour's campaign for women's equality over the centuries. Yet I worry about my daughters because the Tories are turning the clock back. And we know David Cameron has a woman problem. So let's give him an even bigger one. Let's elect our first woman leader and our first Labour woman Prime Minister. Thank you.
I am not running a campaign just to win this contest. I am running a campaign to win for you, to win for Labour in 2020, because I'm sick of losing, and I bet you are too. If we're to do that, though, if we're to win, we need to face up to the hardest truth of all. And you know this when I say it. Millions of people out there, in your community and in mine, all over the country, have lost their emotional connection with our party. They look at us and they see a Westminster elite. They don't see a party that they can relate to anymore, and we cannot carry on as we are. I will change the Labour Party. I will take Labour out of the Westminster bubble, and I will be a leader that people can relate to, whose voice can carry into all the nations and regions of our country. I will appoint a front bench that reflects the communities of our country, that speaks in a language that they can understand. And make no mistake about this, I will trust you, our councillors and our councils again, with the powers that you need to change our communities and restore people's trust in local politics. But you know, we need to do more than this, and I will do more than this. I'm going to put the pride back into this party. It's time to stop beating ourselves up. It's time to get up off the floor. This party has the best values of any. This party has the best people of any. Be proud of who we are and what we've achieved. But let's lift our sights again and help me develop a Labour vision for the 21st century, a comprehensive education system that leaves no child behind, not a market of free schools and academies. A secure home for everyone and reviving the dream of home ownership that's died for millions. A national health and care service that supports people with dementia and autism as well as it treats cancer. That is a Labour vision. That's a big vision for the 21st century, a party that helps everyone get on in life. You've seen the polls. I am the person that can get us back in touch with the public. I don't want to give Cameron and the Tories a problem. I want to beat them. I will make us win again. Join me, be part of this campaign, and let's get this great party of ours back where it should be. Thank you very much.
The painful truth is we lost the election because we lost touch with too much of the country. People didn't trust us on the economy or with their taxes, and we didn't offer a positive alternative of a better life that everyone could feel part of. There's now only 24 seats with a Tory majority of less than 3,000, and we've got to win back 94 to form the next government. Now, the scale of this challenge means this isn't the time to stick with what's comfortable and familiar or go for one more heave. If we do that, we'll be defeated. We must turn the page and make a fresh start. And none of us who are leadership candidates can do it without you. You have got to be equal partners in our mission to win in 2020. You've faced the toughest cuts of all, and you have responded with innovation, skill, determination, and real leadership. And we must learn from you, and we must back you, and we must trust you. And as leader, my mission will be to win power in order to give it away, to get it out to our cities, towns and counties, and down to communities and families too, because that's the only way we'll create a stronger economy and a fairer society where everyone succeeds. You know, I'm in politics because I believe your chance of fulfilling your potential should never depend on where you're born, what your parents did, or the colour of your skin. And we are passionate about tackling injustice, but we won't help people simply by railing against the strong. We have to offer people a chance and not a grievance. Make no mistake, we are at a crucial point in our history. And we've got to show we're capable of change or be out of power for decades. You know Labour must be well led because you lose your seats and the people you represent suffer when we fail. I won't always say what's comfortable for our party, but I will say what I believe is right. And as yesterday's survey of Conservative councillors shows, I will be the leader the Tories fear. Together, we can change our party, win in 2020 and change the country, but only if we change. If there's no change, we've got no chance, and we mustn't let our people down again. Thank you.
Thanks very much for inviting us here today, for the questions and the discussion. Local government is obviously absolutely key to everyone's life in this country, and I think we have to recognise the role has to be enhanced, the respect for it has to be enhanced, and central government support for local government has to be dramatically improved. 40,000 people have joined the Labour Party since May the 7th. They haven't joined with no reason. They've joined because they're angry at the election result, they're angry at the defeat, and they're angry about the prospects of 5 years of cuts, starting with £12 billion benefit cuts, going on to whatever horrors the budget has for us next week. I was first elected as a local councillor in 1974 in Haringey. I was chair of planning, I was chair of public works, I was chair of community development, and we did some amazingly innovative things. Somebody asked me once, what regrets do you have of that period in the 1970s and 1980s, which was seen as a golden age for local government? I said, I've only got one. I didn't spend more when I could have done on building more community centres and more of the things that really did dramatically improve people's lives. Local government is being used as a way of passing on the austerity budget, of making the cuts done by somebody else on behalf of central government. I know the horrors and the pain that you're going through. So I think we need to do a couple of things. One is to establish, as I outlined earlier on, a constitutional convention on the role of local government, devolution and national government in this country. Secondly, local government fully involved in economic generation. Thirdly, local government sufficiently funded to deal with the adult social care and the health issues. And fourthly, to deal with the housing and poverty crisis in this country. I'm proud to work with Islington Council in building new council houses. I'm proud of what we've achieved. But it's going to be taken away and sold off by the strategy of this government. Let's get together and oppose that. Let's use this period to build our party into the strong social movement so we can hold the Tories in their tracks and hopefully strong enough to defeat them in an election in 2020 and bring in all the things that we want to achieve for our people in our communities. That is the mission of Labour. Thank you very much.
Before I make a final announcement, can we just show our appreciation for all candidates?
Well done, Liz. Well done, Donald. Thank you. Can we get a bigger hall next time?
Yeah, these intimate venues that we choose. I think you'll probably already know this, but it's worth saying that the ballot papers go out on the 14th of August with a closing date of the 10th of September. And of course, the successful candidate will be announced on the 12th of September. We are a very important constituency in this election. We have over 6,000 councillors. And of course, we are influential in our own branches and our own constituencies as well. So you are very important people in this room. And I think to the candidate's credit, you've really prepared. You listened to the questions, and I thought that the responses from all candidates were really well thought through and very authentic. I want to say one final thing, which is an apology to Jeremy for my earlier introduction kind of moment of forgetfulness. It certainly wasn't intended to be a slight, Jeremy.
You've got a beard as well, it's okay.
Yeah, we're, it's in fashion now, Jeremy. It's back in fashion.
It's the coming thing, I promise you. Andy, you'll grow one way.
I won't.
This is true.
Okay, well, we need to finish on time because we know what these rascally Tories are like, and they will be walking in any minute whether we finish or not. Show our appreciation to our candidates once again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.